Hey there, it's Steve and Asma. And oh boy, we've got a double feature for you today. We're kicking it off with a letter from the mailbag, the Wag Bag, if you will. And then we've got a special treat, a bit of bonus conversation with DEVO frontman and artist Mark Mothersbaugh. Paul and I had so much fun with this one. Let's jump in.
Chinwag mail call, Steve.
Get out the mailbag, my friend.
Get out the mailbag, Steve.
Mailbag.
I gotta get that bag of mail I hide in the closet from when I was a postal worker. I'll drag that out, and I'll drag it out. I'm going to do a whole thing where I'll drag that out, put it on the floor. Let me open that up and reach in.
Oh, the acting. That's why you're such a great actor. The acting is really on display here, people. At the
it really sounded like I was having a back spasm, didn't it? But here we are, yes, and this is always an exciting part of my day.
Yeah, love the mail days.
Yeah, I do too, actually. So we've just thought we would hit up a letter here. Let me see what we got here. Yeah, we got an awesome letter we wanted to share from a gentleman named Dave. May I? Shall I read it to you, Steve?
Yeah, man. Let it rip.
Good day, gentlemen. This is what Dave writes. He says, "Good day, gentlemen. I have something I think would be perfect for you two men of learning."
Wait, who's he talking about there? Men of learning.
I know, exactly. It's way too much honor. Yeah, this is like, I don't know what he's talking about. A bizarre American-grown mystery that combines history, music, physics, math, and a lot of weirdness. I've rarely heard anyone talk about it. It's the Mayday mystery. And there's a website about it here, www.maydaymystery.org. So we should look into that.
Do you know that?
No, I don't, actually. And so we'll leave that out there for folks to...
We should check that out.
...to take a look at, and we'll go take a look at it. But he continues. I came across the site years ago and check in from time to time. I believe it's a genuine mystery and a weird thing. For me, it ranks up there with the Toynbee tiles and the Max Headroom broadcast intrusion.
Whoa.
But while I often see discussion about those, I never see anyone referencing this. It deserves some attention. See what you think about it. I'd love your opinions. In the meantime, I shall endeavor to wag on. Love the podcast, Dave.
Wag on, Dave.
Well, this is interesting because it does strike me, the Max Headroom intrusion.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Which I guess is something. So this Mayday mystery, which we should all go check out, and then we can maybe have a little recap of this. But if it's like the Max Headroom thing, now I turned you onto that recently, didn't I? You
just recently sent that. We've talked about it, and I'd heard of it, but didn't know much, and then you sent it to me, so I have it pretty fresh on my mind.
Yeah.
Tell people what happened.
It's one of my favorite things. It's in the 80s, I think sort of in the mid-80s.
In my hometown, Chicago.
In Chicago, and it was on public television in Chicago, right?
Yeah. If it interrupted Doctor Who, it had to be public television. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah, so it interrupted an episode of Doctor Who, and it cuts out to this really bizarre, I don't know how long it lasts for, but it's very weird.
It's about a minute and a half.
A minute and a half, and it's got a guy, and he's got a kind of voice-altering thing on, so his voice is altered, and he's got a rubber mask of Max Headroom, who was this weird advertising icon in the 80s who hawked, I don't know, what the
like
fuck
soft
was?
drinks or something?
Yeah,
was it soft
something
drinks?
like that.
Sodas?
Coke or something really weird.
Yeah.
And it was a kind of an early playing on this whole kind of virtual reality thing of this kind of, this virtually generated,
cyber intrusion or virtual reality.
Well, but the character of Max Headroom was this kind of virtual, he only existed in a sort of cybersphere sort of thing.
Oh.
Even though it was an actor doing it, and they sort of, they mocked it up.
That was the pretense.
Yeah, so these weird guys appear, and they're saying incoherent shit for about...
It's so bizarre.
It's really bizarre, and it's eerie, too, because you don't know what the hell's going on. And it ends with, like, kind of weirdness where one guy's whipping somebody else's ass with, like, a...
Yeah.
It gets really strange. And
there's a profile of a guy's ass hanging out, and then somebody's, like, whipping his ass after this weird diatribe that comes from the character.
Weird diatribe that makes no sense. And then sort of a woman appears in a maid's outfit, and, like, it's really bizarre, and then it just cuts out. And I think it's...
Cut to Doctor Who.
Yeah, cut back to Doctor Who.
Doctor Who.
But it is definitely eerie because I think it's one of the only instances, or was up until that point, or maybe beyond, of successfully pirating airtime, of somebody actually sort of like getting a hold of airtime and interrupting it and success. And nobody...
That surprises me, actually.
I think it was.
I believe you, but it makes me think that there must be some uniquely intense security or difficulty with hacking in to television.
I think it isn't. I mean, now it's probably impossible. It's probably really hard to do now.
Right.
But then it might have been easier. But for some reason, that sticks in my head that it was the only time somebody ever successfully did it. Television. I think maybe people did it with radio all the time.
Yeah, I would think.
You know, and there were like genuine pirate radio stations and stuff who would sort of like piggyback on people's...
How do you even do it? Like,
I don't know.
I don't even understand the science of it. Like,
I don't either. That's what's really weird about this thing and how these guys did this. And it's very trippy looking too. Like, I don't know how these guys... I recommend people go...
It's disturbing.
It's very disturbing. And nobody ever figured out who did it.
Right.
Nobody's ever caught the guys who did it. And it's very peculiar, and it's also so random and weird. And it's clearly dudes in a basement somewhere just high out of their minds or something.
It does seem like that.
Yeah, and it's like...
There's no unified message. There's just...
But it has that eerie thing. Have you ever seen that movie Videodrome? Have you ever seen that, David Cronenberg?
Yeah, James Wood, right?
Yeah, which is all about a sort of pirate television station where people maybe are being killed and stuff. There's sort of like snuff films and stuff, and it sort of becomes this whole sort of... Yeah, that's what starts the whole thing, is that there's this kind of pirate...
Doesn't like a monster actually emerge out of the screen and like grab you or something?
Eventually the guy starts merging with the television.
Okay.
He starts merging with the television and stuff like that. It's this whole sort of like... You know, this kind
David Cronenberg is great.
Yeah, this kind of erotic connection to technology and stuff like that. And this sort of like weird, you're hooking up with your TV, like literally, and sort of like...
And that was way before like smartphones and internet. Imagine now with enhanced reality and like body suits and VR
plugging
glasses.
In,
yeah.
Literally plugging in. But there's all kinds of weird stuff in the internet like that, and all sorts of like eerie things and that's one of the cool things I like about it, is that it's like people will leave some mysterious video on YouTube or something. Like I was telling you about the I Feel Fantastic thing, and you didn't know what that was, and it's this very eerie video of a mannequin dressed up in different women's clothing, and it's singing. There's this weird audio track going, I feel fantastic. And it just plays like that. I mean, this has been on there forever, but it's still really eerie to me.
Yeah, I want to tell the listeners real quick that I regularly get messages from Paul of this fucking crazy shit that he finds online, like YouTube or whatever it is. And you are a master curator of this stuff.
Some of this stuff. I've sent you the Vrillon thing, which in British television was a similar thing. I think it was a BBC, and that was a news broadcast was interrupted by an alien voice that happened to have an English accent. and
Suspiciously.
Vrillon, who gives a long sort of speech. And he interrupts the program.
Is it like the Ashtar Command Center? What, something like that?
The Ashtar Galactic Federation or something. There's all like this kind of like pulpy sci-fi stuff. But it goes on for quite a while. And it's this sort of world peace thing, and it's all this sort of like, you know, living in harmony, right? It's very
that one has like an actual unified message. Unlike the Max Headroom thing, this one is like, it's sort of like telling people we are an alien sort of master race, and we are trying to give you a little advice, people, because you Earthlings are screwing up. Here's what you need to do. Get rid of your nuclear armaments. Get rid of like the violence. Stop fighting each other and unify. It's a strangely, like, it's a very optimistic, positive message.
It is. Well, it's very like Day the Earth Stood Still too. Yeah. It's very like, it's like very much that kind of thing. Do you know about number stations? This also reminds me of number stations. Do you know what those are?
I don't think so.
That's really cool. When I was a kid, I got really excited because I discovered on this kind of boom box, you know, this is like sort of the early 80s, late 70s, that my family had, that there were shortwave bands on it. There were a couple of shortwave bands. So I was really excited because I was sitting there listening to Radio Moscow, and like, you know, you could get in all these crazy things and things in languages I didn't know what they were. And, you know, you could get like Vatican radio and stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah, really. It's cool. It was a shortwave, you know, so you were getting all these crazy sorts of things. And every now and then you'd come across just some weird sound. You would hear like it would be like, and then somebody would come on and read numbers, in a different language, just a string of numbers.
Wow.
And then it would go back to, and there were different ones where you would listen, and it would be this weird kind of scratchy, vague sort of oompa music where it'd be like kind of German music like that. And then somebody would come on and go, ein, zwei, drei, like this, and they would read numbers, and then it would go back to this, and it would play you could go and find it, and it would always be playing.
Really?
And there were all these strange things. And there was one where there's a kind of eerie, like little sort of glockenspiel-y, like nursery song played. And then a girl's voice or a woman's voice reading numbers.
Good Lord.
And then there were some in Asian languages. And these used to exist, and they existed for a long time. And for a while, when lots of other things disappeared on shortwave, those were still there. You can actually get now CDs of these things, or you can go to websites. There's websites where you can go listen to them. And the thinking is that they were spy website. They were for spies.
Oh.
That they were messages and signals being given to spies and stuff like that. They're really eerie. They're very strange. And they were kept, I think, in use because with all the development, all the other technology, it remained a really good way to stay under the radar was to communicate through these things, apparently.
And it's a robust signal because it's
and
not high tech and it can't go wrong all these ways. It's just a simple thing you can rely on.
Very simple, exactly. The simpler thing was harder to sort of crack or get a hold of, as opposed to other forms. So they remained on these shortwave stations for a while. And then the thing is called the Russian buzzer. And you hear that they all have different names. Yeah, I got really obsessed with these things for a while, and they're very eerie. And when I was a kid and I'd come across these things, it used to the same way the Max Headroom thing and the way all this shit. And again, it's this uncanny thing.
Yeah,
it's a kind of like there's something uncanny. You're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And
we were talking about this actually, and I find this is almost like the key to our whole show, which is you've got a phenomenon, it has just enough pattern in it for you to realize it's got to have some purpose, but you can't find out what the purpose is.
Yeah, that's right.
That's like the key. That's like our whole show.
That's right. That is the whole thing. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It is this just like, I mean, we talk about the stone circles and the Stonehenge and stuff. It's like, it's this very clearly like constructed thing, but you do not know what the fuck it's for.
Yes, you don't know what it's for. And it's not chance.
Yeah.
It's not just like something piled up in a certain assemblage. It has enough structure and pattern that you can see there's intention in it somehow, but you don't have access to what the intention is. It's mind-boggling.
Oh my God. It's like the cosmos, Steve. It's like the cosmos around us.
Existence.
It's like the human brain, Steve. But it is. It's kind of like, but it is all of that. It's really everything at bottom is an enigma if you follow it through to its logical conclusion, to its absolute end. And the internet, like I used to love when I first would sort of, screw around with a computer when I was a kid and stuff, just entering a string of numbers and see what comes up in the internet. And you get this shit that you're like, what is this stuff? And it's almost like you're reaching the edge of what the internet is, where you're just getting the numbers, where you're just reaching this point where it's like you're reaching the edge, the borderland of it, and it starts to come apart and it's just numbers at the edge or something.
You're right in the sense that the early days of the internet, there was much more chaos and you could just land somewhere very randomly. But even though technically it's not censored, it's not controlled, it is so controlled by the main platforms that it's hard to end up at these, like you said, the fringe areas of the internet, unless you're deliberitally trying to get there.
Really deliberately trying to. Which I do.
Which you do.
And I used to do more of, but it's like, I used to play a game with my kid where we would just skip through Wikipedia, where we would just keep hitting on like a link to a next thing, to a next thing, to a next thing, and see where the fuck we would end up. And we'd start out with like Herman Melville and end up at some crazy fucking, some weird,
hitting the hyperlinks like inside the articles. Yeah.
Yes, just keeping hitting the hyperlinks and seeing where the hell you would end up.
That's hilarious.
There's something about that I love. Well, anyway. We should all, this is an invitation to everybody, us and our listeners, to check out the Mayday mystery, and maybe we can...
Yeah, the Mayday mystery that Dave mentions.
And then we'll revisit that. So this is a nice thing for everybody to jump on board, and we can all revisit at some point down the line.
And also try to see that Max Headroom broadcast. There's versions of it on YouTube.
Yes, definitely. And check out the Toynbee tiles. Oh, I know. Sorry. I'm going to waste some more time.
No, get in there. What's the Toynbee tiles?
The Toynbee tiles. The Toynbee tiles were these. I used to see these on the street in New York City. Somebody was leaving these sort of cutout imprint things on the ground that would say Arnold Toynbee in 2001, something about like, it was this really weird message that was on there, and it didn't make any sense. And it was sort of, and they were all over the place. I know they were all over New York City, and it's still a mystery who was putting them there. And it was something that didn't make any sense about, was it Alfred Toynbee or Arnold Toynbee? Who's the famous historian?
Yeah, I think Alfred Toynbee, I think.
Alfred Toynbee. Yes. And it would reference 2001, and it would reference something about moon bases or something like that. And it was very peculiar.
And then when you look it up, you can't find anything on it?
No. And it was very peculiar because it had a weird relation to a comic monologue written by David Mamet. Had the same thing in it. And for some reason, and it's completely mysterious. And nobody knows what the hell it was.
Has anybody asked David Mamet about it? Or
I don't know. I don't know if you want to go near David Mamet now. He's kind of scary now. I suddenly realized what that was. Oh, it's very strange.
Well, there was around the same time, there were a lot of these kind of like old school sprayed on, like they would create like a little patterned image.
There was the Andre the Giant face was a really sort of like,
and then there was a lot of that Bob Dobbs Church of the Subgenius.
Yeah.
But that referred eventually, I used to see those honestly for a year before I knew what it was because you couldn't look it up.
Yeah.
There was no internet back then. And then slowly it emerged what the Church of Bob Dobbs the Subgenius was.
Yes.
Which is really for another episode. But
it is for another episode. But you're right. That had some actual, you could chase down what that actually was. But this was the Toynbee tile thing. I think nobody ever knew what the hell they were.
Yeah.
And that to me is like my favorite thing in the world. When there's no explanation for it.
Total dead ends.
It makes me really happy.
That's so funny.
For some reason, I have a really high tolerance for no solution to something. It really makes me happy.
Do you get disappointed when you get when somebody shows you the solution, you're like, oh shit, that's disappointing.
Yes.
You do.
I sometimes will read a book or watch a movie and be thinking to myself, oh my God, please don't explain what's going on. Please don't explain it. Please don't explain it. And if it doesn't, I'm so happy. I get to the end of it and I go, oh my God, that's...
But 9 out of 10 times they explain the hell out of it.
9 out of 10 times they explain the hell out of it, and it just kills it for me. Is that interesting? What is that?
You should just stop every movie at the 10-minute point, like right 10 minutes before it stops.
I've done shit like that. Stopped reading a book because I'm like, I don't want to know.
Yeah.
There's a great, before we leave this off, there's a great mystery novel called The Second Curtain by a guy named Roy Fuller. And it's one of my favorite mystery novels. Well, I won't give it away. It's not that it's not solved, but it's an interesting, it ends in a very non-traditional way for a mystery to end.
That sounds great.
And it's one of my favorite ones. Yeah.
Good. And thanks to Dave for sending in the letter.
Yeah, nicely done.
Stay tuned for more Chinwag.
Please welcome Mark Mothersbaugh to the Chinwag. I just am going to ask you something, because we talk about this kind of thing on here a lot. What do you think about things like alien life and UFOs and things like that? Do you think about it at all?
And ghosts.
And ghosts and things like that.
Well, I think they're all, those are two different things we're talking about here.
Yes.
And
yes.
My feeling about ghosts are like, come on, I want to meet you. Where are you? I'd be up for that. And same with aliens. But I think aliens are pretty much smart enough to know to let's leave these people alone for a couple 100,000 years. I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to come in and get involved. I mean, look at all they have to do is watch a couple of our movies, so
they're out there, they're staying away.
Thank you for the warning.
Right, watch some network TV from the 70s, and they're not gonna come back.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's true. So you don't, but you believe that there's the possibility of life somewhere else, but you don't believe that they're here.
I think we're such a small, tiny speck in the universe. And we're in a crummy part. This is not my favorite part. I don't.
We're in a bad neighborhood.
We're in a shitty neighborhood.
Here's what I don't like. We're in a part of the neighborhood where time flows in one direction. Oh, where's that place where there's like a bow or a knot where you can like go, 1973, whoa.
Nice.
Like,
Yeah, right.
1973 again, now I'm back. Or
Right.
1809, I could fix something,
Right.
Don't drink that stuff, you guys. I know that's a bad idea.
Right. That's right. Stay away
I'm
from
from
that.
the future.
Right. Don't eat those lead chips, kids. But do you think that doesn't exist anywhere in our neck of the woods? There isn't any of that. We're going to have to invent a time machine, I suppose.
Well,
because
You got to go near a black hole or something, right? You need a weird body that forms that kind of shit.
I think we're just really much closer to caveman than we are to, being able to go, let's go over to that galaxy and hang out with those protoplasmic weirdos for a while.
Yeah.
It's like, I think we're still pretty far away from that. I think we're still, like more Fred Flintstone than we are George Jetson. So.
That's good.
I agree. I definitely agree. Wow.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to be the day the Earth stood still, like Gort kind of scenario where they just go, look, these people are too much trouble. We need to police
Fuck
these
people. Or potentially, maybe AI will be able to communicate with them better than we would be able to communicate with them.
Or just wipe us out.
I have a
The AI
family.
will
Or
wipe
they'll
us
just
out.
wipe us out. Or they'll just wipe us out.
Well, we
the
might
other.
be AI. We might be able to.
Right.
We might be able to just transfer everything out of. I mean, right now, you guys are young enough that you're like, I love my body. But, I'm like 73. I got to tell you, like 3 years ago when I got COVID and then came out of the hospital, I was like, what the hell just happened? I was, 70. But, at the time in my mind, I was like 45. And I knew I was going to keep making art and music until I was 120. I was certain of it. And then I came out of the hospital and I was like, where's the wall? And where's the bathroom? Right over here. And I was like, I feel like I'm 95. What's wrong? What happened?
Yeah.
So,
much better to put your brain in a titanium cage or something and roll it around.
I regret that nobody did it for Tim Leary because everything was so chaotic around him at the time of his demise, and there were people moving in that wanted to, have a say in things, and it was like, but he wanted to be cryogenically frozen. And,
did he?
Really?
Interesting. Like Walt Disney or whatever.
Yeah, and then it just didn't happen.
Well, allegedly Disney, Can we? Is that available to us? Like, can we actually go do that? Are there people actually doing that? Like, is there services where I could go get my? I guess Ted Williams has his head frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kurzweil. Talk to Kurt. It's like in 5 years,
right?
You're gonna we're gonna be able to just download everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's 5 years.
Well, his 5 year his 5 year thing is that's when AI is going to begin to help out making medical advances. That's when AI is going to start working on cancer and figuring out how to cure cancer and stuff like that. And
see, I'm all for that, but I don't want to have my mind uploaded to a mainframe. I just feel like all the fun stuff. Granted, what Mark is saying, I totally agree. The body is falling apart for us now, but all the fun stuff I think is in the caveman part of us. Like, what good is it going to be for me to be consciousness floating in digital algorithmic space? You can't have sex, you can't make things. You
can't eat a cheeseburger. Although you probably will be able to fool your brain into thinking you're eating a cheeseburger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you sound like those anti-Darwinists now because
I'm not that, but
he's not that. Yeah.
Sex will be much better.
Right.
You'll be able to dial it in, and you'll be able
I see
to
what you mean.
go way down.
And that's what I'm saying. Right.
You won't be floating in ethereal space.
Okay.
You'll be. No. It'll be like those little things that are delivering pizzas in front of my on Sunset Boulevard.
Those things are hilarious.
You'll be one of those cute little things. Well, in the first generation, that's what you'll be. And then you'll work your way up to a Tesla truck. Then you'll be a Tesla truck, and then
God.
then it'll get better after that.
Please not be a Tesla truck. I don't want to be a Tesla truck. But those those little delivery things are hilarious.
They're cute.
They're amazing, and they're smart. I'm like, they're actually pretty smart. They're kind of
damn
amazing.
cute.
No, but I think Steve, it's true. I think not only will the sex be better in the cheeseburgers, you'll be able to be a cheeseburger having sex with another
and have
cheeseburger.
Sex with another cheeseburger.
Yeah, or having sex with cheeseburgers or whatever. It'll be like the sky's the limit.
Okay.
Will be at that point
All right.
once we download into everything else. Holy cow!
And you go, and I want to start it better than the best sex I ever had when I was just a caveman.
Right.
I want it to be better than that.
Yeah.
And you just start there.
I guess you're right, because Elon Musk now has this Neuralink, which is like a read and write chip, which goes into your brain, and it can read what your synapses are doing when you're having, like, he's designed it so that you can help guys who lost an arm in the war or something.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's cool. But it's also like, they're going to read your brain when it's having sex, and then it can write that synaptic pattern whenever you want to dial it in on your phone. So you could be like, yeah, let's dial up an orgasm right now.
Oh,
or whatever.
really?
And they're working on
weird.
that. That's what Neuralink is, I think.
And so the idea with being, I can download, like, move my arm and open my hand and close my hand.
Yeah.
But you're saying that you could do it and you could just be like,
Then they'll use it for everything, basically, once they get that worked out.
Right.
So,
oh wow, that's crazy. I didn't know that's what that was.
What's the movie where the guy's a scientist and they're working on being able to film your thoughts in your mind, and
Is that
and then they're in pools of saline liquid. It was like at the time. Yeah, and you're floating, and then you start hallucinating, and you go into
Altered
these-
states.
Altered states.
Altered states,
yeah.
Altered states, yeah.
Well,
Paul does that.
I was always impressed by that one segment where the naughty employee went and put that outfit on while he was having sex with the girl in the laboratory, and then
he kind of ODs on having sex.
He takes it home and the other guy does. The guy that was the head of the company was totally straight.
He ODs on having sex, right? He overdoes it and he kills himself.
He overdoes it, but he doesn't kill himself. But
he overdoes
because
it.
afterwards he gets into golf.
Well, there you go.
When he comes back, he gets into golf.
Now I'm not. Is that Altered States or is that something else?
That's a different one, I think.
Oh,
maybe I'm not sure, but Altered States
shit.
is no. I'm not sure.
I think
it might
it's Altered
be.
States.
I haven't seen Altered States in so long. Have you ever done one of those, a flotation tank or an isolation tank? Did you ever do any of those?
when I was in a band, we used to ride in an Econo line from Akron to New York City so we could play CBGB's or Max's Kansas City. And then they never paid you enough that you could get a hotel room, so we'd just have enough money for gas to drive back to Ohio. But there was not enough seats because there were 5 people in the band and a sound man that we would all ride in this truck along with all the gear. One of us would have to lay on top of the speaker cabinets, and there was like less than a foot between the roof of the thing and so somebody would have to just lay there flat for like 500 miles.
Oh, God.
And so that was kind of like one of those.
Essentially an isolation tank.
Yeah,
It was
that was sort
essentially
of
a complete sensory deprivation tank. Interesting. Well, they're interesting. If you ever, you should try one sometime.
Yeah, Paul has done a lot of them, and they do. I think Timothy Leary would have been into it, I think.
Well, I'm sure he did it.
Probably.
I'm sure he did it.
I'm sure he did too.
Did you ever encounter this guy, John Lilly, who was the kind of founder of that stuff? Yeah, because he's the guy who invented it. And he was a sort of, because the Defense Department was asking him to look into it as a means of torture, as a means of like,
of course.
Of course. Well, that's what I mean. The technology, the technology goes to the military first. All this shit goes to the military first, and so But then he realized the opposite. It has the opposite effect, and actually, it's sort of euphoric, and you have the opposite effect. And then he just started. I'm sure he knew Timothy Leary because he just started doing shit tons of acid and getting in the thing and thinking he could talk to dolphins and stuff like that. He was a dolphin. He was a marine biologist, and so he would talk to dolphins and stuff like that.
He also liked what was that drug that was like, I think it was a horse tranquilizer that
ketamine.
Ketamine?
Ketamine. He was a ketamine.
Yeah. He was a pioneer with all that kind of stuff, ketamine and all that stuff. Holy cow.
Yeah.
are you like a sort of science fiction fan, or sort of do you read stuff like that, or fantasy or science fiction? Did you read a lot of that kind of thing, or no? Or are you interested in that kind of thing?
You know what? I was ultra nerdy. I read manuals for. I was obsessed with machines and how they worked. And,
Awesome.
And
Like lawnmower manuals and stuff like that, or like computer?
the whole gamut, but mostly like radio, starting with radio.
I was going to say, were you like a ham radio kid? Did you have like a ham radio?
My dad, when he was in World War II, he was a radio guy.
Oh.
And he came out of there, and he was really into electronics, and he built a stereo. And so I remember in the early 60s, like he made all the kids sit on one side of the living room, and he put the two speakers on two sides, and there were these series of hyper stereophonic discs that came out. God, I don't know who made them.
Wow, what does that mean? It's just super.
Well, there would be like, you'd sit
Sound
there
separation.
and you'd hear a train coming in the distance from one side. And then and by the time it got to the middle, it would be big, and then maybe the whistle would go off, and then it'd keep going, and it would go out the other side.
So do the Doppler effect in your house.
Yeah, and so you were like, wow.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow.
And he was so obsessed with that. But he was into drones. He used to build drones and fly them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, back in the 60s,
Wow.
70s.
Wow, that's amazing. And so, do you think there's still people who do ham radio? Are there still like ham radio operators? Oh, yeah? Really? Awesome.
Yesterday, oh my God, who was it yesterday? Oh my God.
The Chinwag produces knowledge.
There was a couple, and this woman told me she was still into ham radio.
Awesome. I'm so
she was
happy
still
to hear that. I'm so fucking happy to hear that.
Yeah.
That gives me faith in humanity to
Faith
know
in
that there's still
humanity.
people out there. There's still people out there doing that. I always see.
Yeah.
I'm completely like a tech. I've always envied the people who have sort of technical ability or kind of engineering ability or the ability, any of that kind of talent. I have none of it. And I always wanted to I'd love to have a ham radio, but I never would have been lost on me. But the whole fantasy of it, I really love. So it's great to hear that people.
Yeah, the idea of talking to somebody in Australia, you know.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, when the
That
grid
kind of
goes
thing.
down, maybe that's what we'll have is that kind of radio, like crank them by hand and
That's
stuff.
true, though. Actually,
You know, you're saying that, and it actually is a possibility that something that fucked up could happen.
Yep.
Yeah, like if the internet went out, wow, that's so crazy.
But
So
besides
Yeah.
manuals, I'm sorry, Paul, but besides
No.
manuals, I feel like you may have been into comics only because I look at your drawings and I feel like there's comic elements. What kind of stuff were you into in terms of comics?
Okay, well, I have to say my all-time favorite was Dick Tracy.
Oh,
And
amazing.
Right.
because see, I make these blurb books for myself over the decades, and I made a bunch of blurb books with a character called Dick Vanderbeek. So Dick Tracy always had this kind of like a eagle beak,
Yeah.
and I turned that eagle beak into something else, more like a scrotum nose, and then like a bunch of the cops all had those. But then I had these other characters that were like these alien enemies. They were like almost like ghost alien enemies, and
Wow, ghost aliens.
and so
That's
he was
good.
fighting them. But we both liked early Dick Tracy because there'd always be some bad guy
Yeah,
that would almost kill Dick Tracy. You know, he would almost kill him.
yeah.
But then Dick Tracy would make it out of the cement tomb that he was in or whatever it was. He'd get out, and then he'd do something even more sadistic back to that guy. Like that guy would the guy who did that would be
Revenge fantasy.
Yeah, he'd be rolled up in a carpet, and they knew he was in there. But then they saw two carpet guys go in, and they rolled up this carpet, and they were taking it out, and he goes, and he goes over to his car seat, and of course Dick Tracy. Why would he have a cigar box full of bees in his car? Okay, but he did.
He's Dick Tracy.
He went and took the box of the cigar box, and he opened the lid, and he put it against the end. And so they went in, and they were stinging the bad guy all over the face. I think it was Babyface.
I was going to say, because the villains were what we were
Babyface.
like.
Yeah.
Well, it was Prune Face and Flat Top I was obsessed with as a
Yeah,
kid.
yeah.
Flat Top was incredible to me. He was so, I don't know why I loved
Yeah.
Flat Top more than anything.
Well, he had a great look.
He did
very
have all the
architectural.
the villains were amazing in those things.
Yeah.
That was a wide-ranging chinwag. And I love that he's a dude who read technical manuals as a kid, and that he was
that's
that
really
kind of guy,
awesome.
which makes perfect sense. That he,
Yeah.
I love people like that, and it's like I just love people like that.
The kind of that sort of obsessive attention to detail and like
Yeah.
sequencing. Yeah.
And just a kind of purity of connection to stuff that's just like there's something really pure and like lovely about it. As always, thank you for listening, and
Wag on weirdos.
there we go. There we go.
Just jump in. That's what I do at the very end.
Yeah, awesome.
Chinwag is a production of Treefort Media and Touchy Feely Films, hosted and executive produced by Paul Giamatti and Stephen Asma. Executive producers for Treefort is Kelly Garner, with additional producing by Mary Chulenza. Dan Carey is executive producer for Touchy Feely. Original theme music by Luke Top, with additional music by Via Mardot. Our associate producer is Aidan Brooks. Audio production supervision by Jared Brom and Matt Dyson. Editing and mixing by Jared Brom. Lastly, for more information, go to chinwagpod.fm and find us on Instagram or TikTok at chinwagpod or on Twitter at chinwag_pod.